And welcome back to the fifth round of rFactor 2's Formula Challenge powered by TraxionGG. It's been a pretty intense season so far, but we had a little bit of a break from the official racing after there being a few technical issues a couple of weeks ago at Indianapolis. That round 4 event has been basically replaced, and we'll be doing that later on in October. So we're still going to get the 6-race season, but round 5 is back today. Obviously the 4th race of the season, but still being called round 5 here at the newly renovated Zandvoort. We had a pretty interesting race back on Monday for the Formula Pro guys, and now it is the chance for the let's call them second tier drivers to get themselves a seat in Formula Pro, as this is the only way to get yourself in, by finishing in the top 2 in this championship. So today we're going to have some pretty action-packed racing, I'm sure. Myself, Cameron and Roger, taking you through the action along with Paul Buckley today. Paul, it's certainly been quite an interesting season, and I'm sure Zandvoort is going to be the same.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been looking forward to this one. Zandvoort, as it is a spectacular track. Maybe not the best for overtaking standpoint, but the track itself is beautiful, and especially the way it's been redone in rFactor 2. Obviously we saw other high-end motorsports there not so long ago, so we know roughly what we can expect, but obviously no 2 races ever the same, so we're expecting a few surprises throughout this evening, and seeing what we can pull off. Obviously in that non-championship round, while it was a bit of fun, we saw some usual faces at the top end, as well as a few we wouldn't expect, so I wonder if we might see them back up at the top end, a bit reinvigorated from having a good result last time out.
Yeah, certainly there was some names, as you said, non-championship race. So there is basically just an open race we got in the end after having some issues with the official servers. And today we're going back to all of the, let's see, the big names. And one of them is David Mochik on the screen, currently your championship leader, as he gets a bit wiggly out of turn number 1. And he was a little bit fortunate to win the previous race in the season in Nürburgring. Obviously, he was very quick, but there was a penalty I think it was Arne Schumvli on that day, who was having a couple of issues. So he basically inherited that win and is doing pretty good indeed. But let's see what he can do in this qualifying. And I think Paul's going to be quite a close qualifying, being such a short track.
Yeah, it definitely will be not a lot of time between everybody, but not only that, it is a very important qualifying session, as I was saying a moment ago. It's not the easiest track to overtake on, so for your best chances in the race, you want to get yourself as high up the grid as you can. And as we've heard from some of our insider info, we've got from Aidan Millward, some of the corners, particularly turn 9, require a lot of bravery around here as well. So it's not just the pressure of needing to get a good lap time in from the 2 hot laps realistically you're going to get. You also need to have the gumption to go through some of these corners at absolutely top pace.
Oh, you absolutely do. It's a very highly committed track. We get the first time in of a 1:12.1, and I'm sure we're going to see these times come down as the session progresses, with the track rubber getting more and more as the laps get put down. And here is Arne Schumvli, currently second in the championship, only 1 point behind David Mochik, and he's going to go second on the lap times as well. Only a quarter of a second behind Mochik though. So I think, this close qualifying is going to certainly be continuing as we get some of the other drivers, as Jim Paresis comes around the final corner as well. There is DRS throughout the banking phase. It is just before that Arie Luijendijk final corner, as Paresis there goes up into 3rd place.
Yeah, and this is as Lauren Kirchmeckers takes P1 away from David Mochik with a 1:11.9. It's seeing all these guys nice and close to each other on the grid. It only adds that bit of spice to the remaining rounds of the championship, because as you touched upon a few moments ago, it is very, very close at the top end here, with everybody fighting for that promotion into Formula Pro for next season. And the closer they get on the road, as that's Kevin Morville drifting through turn 13 and on into 14, the closer they are, it's just going to make the end of this season so much more exciting to watch.
Yeah, still obviously the 3 races to go now, with Zandvoort, then Monza, but also that rerun of Indianapolis all to come as well. So we're effectively halfway through the season, and we certainly know who is going to be fighting for that championship. And another one of them may be Kirchmeckers, who's currently at the top, but he is about 18 points off Mochik at the moment, as we know with this point system, after the first couple of positions for the race win, it basically goes down to 1 point per position. So if you're 18 points behind someone, you effectively need to finish a net 18 places above them, realistically, to have a chance. So he's sitting there 6th in the championship, but he's still a little way behind. And it was actually him who was having the issues in Nürburgring. He was very fast, but couldn't quite make it work because of a penalty on that day. But now coming out of the final couple of corners is Vagianis, and he is now into this final corner in 11th place in the championship. Let's see where he can put himself with his quali attempt, and he goes up to 4th place.
Yeah, so a good showing for Vagianis at the moment, up into P4 as everybody completes their first flying lap of the session. And yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. I've noticed already a few of the drivers taking different lines. You'll see some sort of diving across to the right hand side to try and shorten the run. Got Sanfilippo here, sort of going more towards the middle, and there's a few drivers I've seen as well staying towards the left and just naturally where the car falls. And that's not the only corner of this on the circuit, of course, where they're going to do that. Turn 3, you may see some differing lines as well. Most of them, I think, will go for the high line around as Duelist comes across the line into P8. So it's going to be interesting to see everybody experimenting as we go as well, just trying to find that commitment.
Yeah, commitment is probably the most important word around this track. It's so high speed, and I mean, even this little technical section of corners to finish the lap, you've really got to push the limits, as there's a lot of positive camber and banking in these corners, not just obviously the main ones that we talk about here, like the final corner, but also in a couple of the others, and you can really just commit the front end into them and just rely on the car a little bit as Day goes up into 11th place, or as he goes on the grass there. Fortunately, we're in the sim. You can press escape. Now we come back to Sanfilippo, and he was one of the drivers who was potentially a little bit surprising last time out, although actually we've got 2 Sanfilippos in the order, so it must be a couple of brothers racing there. So let's see what Danilo can do as he comes across the line, up there into 9th place.
Yeah, so you can see just how close it is up the top. As we were saying, it's going to be a close qualifying session as we take a look at Zalagianis coming down through turn 14 across that spectacular banking and across the line. It was a purple sector 3 for Zalagianis up to P9 with that one. So everybody's finding pace in different parts of the track at the moment, and it's going to be interesting as the session goes on. I can just see Ivanov popping up into P6 as well.
Yeah, Ivanov there. He's been this is that is a different split that's being on screen at the moment, actually, because I'm going to say he hasn't actually been able to get into that split one, but they're down in 14th actually. Someone talk about Tony Mellor. So what you're just seeing, I think, was the second split. Tony Mellor actually had a really good race last time out. As we come back to the first split here, Mellor had a really good race, and just showing that the Zancho car in general is pretty good, but he hasn't been able to get himself promoted into the first split just yet, because every 2 races, it basically then looks at the previous 2 races, I should say, and then wherever you scored, obviously ranks all of the splits together and then moves drivers up and down accordingly. And he hasn't been able to get himself there, but someone who did was Aidan Millward. First race of the season was in split 2, had a good result, then managed to get himself promoted, and he's been in split 1 ever since. And in the last 2 races, he's actually sitting at 8th in the championship for those last 2 races. So certainly getting some good results is our fellow commentator Aidan Millward. And now let's see what he can do on his first hot lap.
Yeah, so coming around turn 3, one of those extreme banking corners where you sort of go out and go around on the top line, and the banking sort of guides the front of the car around, so you can get on the throttle nice and early in that really twisty section through the middle of the circuit down towards turn 7. Tightens up a little bit again, and then into 8 and 9. It's I do love this circuit. It's there's some great corners, as we see Aidan Millward getting a bit twitchy through a few of them, and there again. And Aidan Millward was one of the ones I was sort of hinting at, maybe coming in a little bit reinvigorated to this race. Had a pretty good result in the non-championship round, so maybe carrying a bit of momentum from that. into this now properly championship round as he continues around the banking and towards the line across turn 14 with that DRS wide open. No Dave the Seagull this time, and across the line into P7 for Aidan Millward. So a decent first lap for him.
It's pretty good to see him getting up there. 1.2 seconds off the pole position, so not ideal as such, but certainly getting into the top 10 is a good result for him. And if he can actually challenge to get himself further up there, then maybe he would be looking at a seat for that potential Zancho team next season. Who knows if Zancho are able to get Shumley in that top 2 in the championship, as we see Noah Reivers coming around the final corner for Netrex GP. He's actually been someone who I think has been very good. He's sitting there third in the championship, just 4 points off Mochik, but he's been consistent, but he hasn't got a race win yet, and that race win gets you that basically 5-point bonus, because that's what the jump is between first and second, is 5 points, which is very crucial in the championship, and that's probably why he's lacking behind just a little bit. Obviously it's only 4 points, but as we said, getting 4 points on your opponents is harder than it seems. So let's see what the homeboy can do as he comes through this sector 2. He's gone purple in sector 1, and now into these very tricky sort of long apex corners, just getting a little bit wiggly there before coming out onto the back straight. Let's see what he can do, but it's certainly looking like a fairly decent lap so far.
Yeah, absolutely, and you'll hear it all the time, the home field, as he goes purple in sector 2. The home crowd adds a few tenths, and definitely feeling that for Noah Reivers at the minute. Of course, the Dutch driver at a Dutch racetrack. As we get a view from the DRS opening as we go straight onto that banking of turn 14. You can see just there just how early that DRS opens around that banking, and across the line it is P1 for Noah Reivers then with the purple sector 3 as well. So a very good lap, that 111, putting him half a second ahead of Laurent Kirchmacher so far at the top of the field. As we take another look at George Zalagianis coming around for another lap, currently P11 and improving on this lap so far. So let's see if he can move himself a few positions up the grid.
Yeah, that's a pretty incredible lap by Noah. As we said, the track does rubber in. It gets quicker as the session goes on. So I'm sure we might see a couple of those drivers improve their times. Well, for instance, Mochik and Shumley, best part of a second off the pole position. That's quite incredible, and that's quite a lot of lap time to be gained if you want to say that most of that is rubber, which is quite interesting indeed. But I'm sure they'll come out for another lap as Zalagianis actually backs out of his lap, and he won't be going just yet. And actually, on the screen you can see the top 8 in the standings are all not out on the track at the moment, so they're just waiting a little bit longer. Still 7 minutes to go in the session, but someone who is doing some good laps at the moment is Adam Rainey. He's purple in that first sector, now purple in that second sector. Netrex GP looking very good here. Noah Reivers already on that provisional pole position, now with their other driver Adam Rainey coming into the final 2 corners of the lap. And if he can nail this, he might be able to get a Netrex lockout. And looking at the speed that they've got, maybe this is an omen of what we're going to see over the course of the 45-minute race. And he goes to pole position by 0.2 of a second to his teammate. So I'd say the Netrex guys have certainly got the car figured out at this track.
Yeah, they seem to have absolutely nailed the setup around here, and it really is showing so far in this session. As you say, with them currently sitting on P2 as Zampini's coming down across the line now. Moves up 7 positions with a purple sector 3. So on this second run for a lot of these guys, they're finding a lot of the time whether the track really has just rubbered in that hard for these guys to be finding huge chunks of time. There's an improvement there, so I imagine we'll see a fair few improvements as everybody rounds out their second laps. This is Adrian Blasco, Sim Racing Club, making his way onto the banking of turn 14. An improvement, not improvement, but if it's an improvement in sector 3, may be able to gain a few positions. It does, in fact, just gain the 1.
An interesting one seen there on the leaderboard is Alejandro Lopez, down there in P, I think now 23, hasn't set a lap yet. And he's someone who he hasn't had the best qualifying performances so far this season, but he often makes up loads of places in the race. And just want to see what he's going to be doing with that. We also have Colin Spork there, Robin Panzer. They haven't set laps yet either. So I do wonder if they're just waiting towards the end of the session to try and get the fastest track possible before getting their attempts in. See Arne Schoenvliet's out on track, so is Noah Reivers, but as Zampini there goes up into P14, and now Marco Sanfilippo coming around the final corner. He's going to be potentially getting himself up towards about 6th, 7th position with this lap. But unfortunately, I think he's actually going to lose a little bit there at the end and stays down there in P11. But Lopez Ahona there goes up into P10. It's a bit more like it for someone of his ability.
Yeah, so it's interesting. It's a very bold strategy for, say, those that haven't gone out and set a lap time to leave it so late, because anything can realistically happen, and it puts a lot of pressure on to make sure you absolutely nail it if you're leaving it as late as possible to set that lap time. As we see, Reivers gone out for another out lap, and that's one way to warm the tyres up as you head around. And on to start his lap then. So it's a bit of a wiggle there through 13 and onto the banking of 14. DRS wide open down towards the line. Can he pip his teammate for pole position with this lap then? We saw it was very quick last time out, but Adam Rainey was just a little bit quicker. And what can the Reivers do this time? As the back end's just trying to step out every single time he tries to touch the throttle, it seems.
Getting it's a bit difficult to see. Noah gets a really big slide there, and it's actually raining, which is a bit difficult to see from the input that we've got. But it's actually getting a little bit wet, which is quite interesting because as Noah Reivers is going to lose the rear end there, and that means that some drivers may be struggling to keep the car on the track just as much. And now Noah really getting a bit wiggly as he comes through this sector 2, trying to keep that rear end in check, but it's certainly a little bit more difficult to drive in these conditions. And I don't know if anyone's going to be improving, as he certainly hasn't in that first sector.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, this is exactly what I was saying. There is Robin Panzer. I was about to touch upon the likes of Robin Panzer and Colin Spork. And those drivers that hadn't set a lap time yet, they left it late waiting for the track to run. And now there's rain, and they're not going to be anywhere near those pole times with the weather the way it is. Like we saw from Noah Reivers as he's just coming to complete the lap, how much he was struggling on the slick tyres. Still manages to go purple in sector 3, however. But we saw how much he was struggling through the first and second parts of the lap on slick tyres where the rain's coming down. Yeah, so it does mean that those... If you just look at the back end of the grid, you've got like Fabian Bala and Colin Spork and Robin Panzer are all stuck right the way down the back there on a track where qualifying is so important because they took the gamble.
Oh, it's that's the interesting thing is Pignataro. It looks like he's on some intermediate or wet weather tyres there with the grooves on them. I mean, you're going to be getting some knowledge at this point, but you aren't going to be. He's on wet weather tyres on the tower there. You're certainly not going to be improving your time. You will get that bit of knowledge though, which is always very important because in these conditions it's always going to be ever changing and you never really know what's going to be coming your way. But what we do know to be coming is a Netrex 1-2. No one is going to be improving in these conditions, and I think it's a very good job for them indeed, especially for Adam Rainey getting that pole position. Certainly wouldn't have expected him to be up there, but he's certainly doing well indeed. As you see their tyre graphics, the wet weather tyres are the blue compound tyres. And obviously you can see with some grooves on there as well. And I'm sure we're going to see most drivers going out on that at the moment, but maybe some will try the dries for the start of the race and just gamble that it might stop raining.
Yeah, it does really throw a spanner in the works for the start of this as well. It makes strategy that so much more important, as I think we saw Robin Panzer out there on the soft tyres. Did I see a minute ago with the tyre graphic up on the screen as well, down in the 21st, really taking a gamble at the end of the session. But yeah, wet weather tyres looking like the place to be at the moment. As you say, we know how much it's going to rain and how long it's going to rain for. Can you ever really know with the weather? And do you, as you say, try on those soft tyres early and maybe just try and survive the first few laps and wait for the track to dry out a little bit? Or do you play it safe, go on the wet tyres, and then come in for a pit stop when it dries out? It's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out.
Certainly is, and I'm sure. Well, we'll have to see how, because obviously we've got a warm-up session as well. So if it continues raining, then there's going to be obviously another like 10 minutes of rain before the race starts, which would be obviously the track getting quite wet with some limited running as well. But once the race starts and you get loads of drivers circulating, especially if they start on those wets, the track will dry, and over the course of a 45-minute race, that's going to make the strategy quite interesting as Pinataro comes here. But look, a 1:27, nowhere near the times that they need to be. But as the session comes to an end as well. But for the drivers, they're really going to need to be careful with how much fuel they put in at the start of the race as well. Because depending if it starts raining, etc., then that could really change their strategy this evening. And I wouldn't be surprised if someone's going to get it wrong. But it certainly looks like it's quite tricky for these drivers at the moment.
Yeah, it's a great way to show off the rain on the new Zandvoort circuit. It does look spectacular with all the way that everything's reflecting. But yeah, it's going to be very tricky around here. It's already a track that requires a lot of commitment, as you said earlier, and now you've got to try and find that commitment in the wet as well, as Sven Barbakov going all kinds of sideways coming off the banking at turn 3. Now Mochik coming around turn 14. You can see he's definitely not finding any time on this last session. He's got G4, and I imagine he's going to stay there. Does indeed. So it is definitely, as you say, going to be a Netrex 1-2, which is going to be incredibly interesting for the championship as well.
Oh, it certainly is, and it's going to be quite well. For instance, someone who's fairly high up is Robin Panzer down there in 21st place. He's currently 5th in the standings. Colin Spork down there 22nd. He's 8th in the standings. That's going to be quite crucial for their finishing positions as we move into the warm-up session. But first, let's have a look here. We got Adam Rainey leading the way there, but only by 0.2 of a second to his teammate Noah Reivers, before you have a bit of a gap actually to Laurent Kiersmakers, David Mochik as well. They'll be a little bit disappointed. But Roberto Pinataro getting up into 5th place. He'll be quite happy with that. I believe that's his highest qualifying position of the season so far. Before you have Arne Schumvik there in 6th place. He's got some work to do to catch down his championship rival David Mochik before Vagianis, Morville, Jim Paresis and Lopez Arjona round out the top 10 for the qualifying here for the round 5 of Formula Challenge Series. And the drivers with this rain are going to have to be thinking now during the warm-up session what they're going to do, because obviously there's always it's always a bit difficult to decide because the weather's ever changing. But here's the second page. We've got Ada Millwood there in 11th place before Marco Sanfilippo. Then we've got Julius there in 13th place, Zalo Giannis in 14th, and Zampini rounding out the top 15. Before there's some other drivers down there who have sort of gone up and down the splits as the season goes on. For instance, Oliver Day jumping up into the first split here, down there in 20th position. As well, to be honest, even anyone who wants to join now, you can go onto the rFactor 2 competition system. You may not get yourself up to split 1 by this point in the season, because you won't be able to get enough points, but certainly you might be able to get yourself some good racing indeed. And then big story, Robin Panzer, Colin Spork not setting a lap early enough in the session and finishing over 6 seconds off the pace as the rain starts coming down. And that is what happens when you leave your laps late, Paul. When the weather gets involved, it can really change the qualifying order.
It can indeed. It's one of those where you're gambling on nothing happening, and then if something does happen, you've got to be prepared to face the consequences and try and take the positions back, as the track's looking pretty wet now as we're in the warm-up. But the sky is looking a bit more blue this time, so maybe there may be a bit of a dry line forming once the race starts. We may see some gambles onto the soft compound tyre, or any one of the slick compound tyres. Realistically, though, I think in changeable conditions you would probably want the slicks to give yourself as much grip as possible. So that strategy may start, but there is still a lot of spray, as you can see there. down in Mochik, you can't see the car in front, you can just see the cloud of water it's kicking up.
Yeah, the spray is going to be huge, especially if you're, let's say, P10, P15 downwards, where you're just going to be looking through a huge, thick cloud of smoke as one of the pink cars there goes for a bit of a spin in front of Mochik, and that's something to look out for as well as cars spinning. But something quite interesting for the strategic side for this race is these drivers don't have to do a pit stop. They can, but it's not by the rules. So in theory, they could just fill up the tank to do 45 minutes, assuming it's going to stay wet, and just stay out on the wet tyres because they last a lot longer. But if it dries out, then not only are they going to have to make the pit stop, but they're also then going to have to think about their fuel as well, because in the dry, obviously, you use more fuel. So then you're going to have to do loads of calculations during the race as well. So I think this is really opening up to some interesting strategic options. But it looks like most people are going to be out on the wets for now, as you would expect. But when it dries out, it's certainly going to be a challenge for these drivers.
Yeah, absolutely will. That was Reivers getting challenged and still getting challenged by the conditions. Asked about measures to stop before hitting the wall, but still back to the pits for him in the Netflix car. Of course, starting alongside his teammate on the front row of the grid is going to want to get as much confidence in these kind of conditions as he can to start the races. That's Mochik. There is a lovely bit of Tokyo drifting as well, and it's going to look spectacular for these first few laps, I think, as everybody tries to find the traction, and we'll see a few drifts around here. It's going to be very, very interesting to watch indeed, as you can see from the little throttle graphic down there, just how careful Mochik's having to be when he's getting on the power coming out of a corner. If you just watch it right now as it's slowly, gradually getting on the power, not to full throttle yet, even now and there. Even when he does, the back end still disagrees with him, and he was almost at the next corner.
Yeah, that was a really nice little vision there of how tricky it is. Obviously, you can get most of the way on the throttle, but as soon as you go that wide open, you just get that little bit of extra spike in torque, extra power, and the rears are really going to be not liking that, as we see the wonderful banking here in turn 3. That was obviously recently added and then reprofiled by rFactor 2, newly scanned data, and also this track is for free if you want to try it on the Steam store as well. But yeah, certainly a really great example of Zandvoort, and these drivers are enjoying it. But it's just so difficult. You can see with Arne here as well, coming through this sector 2. So tricky to get even close to full throttle. In fact, he doesn't get close to full throttle coming between those two corners as well. So that self-control is going to be quite important, because if you overdo it just that little bit, there's going to be some quite drastic consequences.
Yeah, and as we were saying before about how, for example, the exit curve of turn 9 will eat you up. And that's one of the places that required a lot of commitment, but I think around here everywhere is going to require commitment in conditions like these. As you can see going through the banking, only now getting on full throttle for Arne Schoenfeld, pretty much onto the straight at that point already. It was a nice warm-up time for Schoenfeld, so definitely getting his eye in. Take a look through the back wing of San Filippo's car. And you can still see the spray going up behind the car as the warm-up starts to wind down, with just a few minutes left to go before we'll be getting ready for the 45-minute race. And
here we're going to see some, well, we're going to go through a couple of things obviously to talk about during the race. As you mentioned, it's 45 minutes of action. There's no mandatory pit stop. There are the 3 compounds of tyres available, but you will assume that most drivers are going to be using either the softs or the wets for now. But as you saw, there was 20-minute qualifying session, but they were limited on the laps, and that was the important point. Obviously, if you went to do your laps early, you would then maybe leave yourself with those minutes at the end of the session where the track's getting increased in rubber, and you might set a faster time. but you would have already ran out of laps. However, those people who did that early, obviously being Panzer and Spork, they ran out of time and it started raining. So that is obviously always the guess that they have to do. But yeah, 45 minutes of action, no mandatory pit stops. They can do pretty much whatever they want in that regard. Obviously, there's refueling as well, so they've got to think about how much fuel that they're going to be taking on in the car, and that's going to be even more important with the wet as well. So I think some drivers are probably going to play a little bit on the side of caution, but obviously making a pit stop is quite important, because obviously overtaking on track is a little bit difficult, especially in the wet. So I think we're going to see a bit of a range of strategies over the course of this race.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we touched upon earlier on, the remainder of the schedule for this season of Formula Challenge, we are now in round 5. It's round 4 being rerun on the 14th of October, as you can see there. But after we are done in Zandvoort this evening, in just a couple of weeks' time, we'll be off to Italy, to Monza, for round 6, and then it will be round 4, finally coming up on the 14th. So a little bit of a shuffle around with issues from last time out, but we are still going to be running that Indianapolis race at the end of the season. And speaking of the season in general, of course, this is the Road to Formula Pro Season 2. All these drivers fighting for their seat in Formula Pro after the season. The 2 best drivers in the final standings from different teams will be chosen to go up into Formula Pro. Each one of those drivers can then nominate their second driver and form their team, because of course Formula Pro is a team-based championship. Those 2 new teams will then promote into Season 2 of Formula Pro, and the bottom 2 teams in Formula Pro will drop out into Formula Challenge at the end of Season 1 for Season 2.
And that is quite a big change compared to the GT series that we've had for the last year and a half or so, where it's been driver orientated. With this being more team orientated, that makes it quite interesting, because it's obviously not just about having one good driver, it's about having a couple. So it'll be interesting to see some of these drivers, whether they or who they bring up with them. Currently, top 2 in the standings are David Mochik of Burst Esports and Arne Schimvli of Zancho Simsport as well. Only 1 point separating them, and Noah Reivers not too far behind as well. So those 3, they've got a bit of a gap to Jim Priestess in 4th. So it's really those 3 that we're looking out for over the next few races, with Zandvoort, Monza and the rerun of Indy, as you just said, Paul. So I think we're really looking at this to be a close end towards the season, but also the guys behind them fighting for their position in the standings. It's going to be a close fight, I think, all the way up and down the field.
It absolutely will be, as we take a look at back end of the top 30 as well. And it is still close between a few of them as well, having their own little battles. Sort of midway through the table, you can see Darius Andre and Stoyan Barbakov quite close in 16th and 17th, as well as, if you look a little bit further back, you've got George Salajanis and Gennaro Julius both starting pretty close to each other tonight. They're just a point away from each other in the standings as well, so there's little battles breaking out throughout it. As much as the main focus is going to be on who's going to get to Formula Pro, we do have those little battles breaking out, as well as drivers form their own little rivalries in the mid-tables to try and get that extra position.
Well, there's always something to fight for, especially when we got the split system, where you basically get your race points, and you get a little bonus depending on which split you're in as well, which means that you can obviously move up and down splits, which is going to be quite important. But let's get to the starting order for the grid here for round number 5, and it's going to be Arne Schimvli on pole, apparently, from David Mochik. Not sure if that's correct, because it should be Adam Rainey, but then Jim Priestess in 3rd, Noah Reivers in 4th place, Robin Panzer in 5th, Adam Rainey in 6th. Laurent Kiesmakers in 7th, with Ada Mild rounding out the top 8. And then coming to finish off the top 12, we've got Danov Brandtholm, Panos Vagianis, Alejandro Lopez Arjona, and also Stoyan Barbakov as well. And Barbakov's an interesting one, because he's basically an independent entry, which you don't get too many of. Then Kevin Morville in 13th, Spork in 14th, Pignataro in 15th, and Zalajanis down there in 16th place, before Fabian Valle in 17th, Zampini in 18th, Sanfilippo in 19th, and Dulis in 20th place. And then I believe this will be the final three drivers with Blasco, the other Sanfilippo, Danilo there in 22nd, before Oliver Day in 23rd place. And then we will go to the formation lap, where we'll find out what the weather's going to be like. And it looks like it's going to be very wet still. Hasn't dried up or done anything like that. So I think, Paul, we're going to be getting a wet weather standing start, which can always be very chaotic.
Yeah, it's going to be, as you say, very chaotic. It's interesting to see how this is going to pan out. I think the opening few laps of this race especially are going to be as much about going fast as they are about going straight. With you just see how wet it still is. Not much water being cleared up so far. They'll be trying to clear up as much as they can on this formation lap, of course. And is that the soft tyres in David Mochik's car? That is a bold choice.
Robin Panzar as well. So Burst Esports trying something a little bit different, but also Danove Brandholm there in that 9th place. This is quite an interesting choice. Let's see how this one works out. They obviously believe that it is going to be drying up. We've got 45 minutes of action, so we're going to find out. We don't know how much fuel they've got on board either, whether they're going to be trying to get to the end, whether they're going to be just assuming they're going to be faster and therefore can make up the time for an extra pit stop. This is certainly quite weird. So let's have a look at what happens here for the 5th round of the Formula Challenge, the Road to Formula Pro Season 2. Here at the newly renovated Zandvoort circuit. We're going to be getting underway when the 5 red lights go out, and hopefully the drivers can get a fairly nice clean start, because it is going to be a very chaotic one here with the wet conditions, very little practice in this car. And here we go, 5 red lights, and away we go here in Zandvoort. Who's going to get a better start? No, not surprisingly, it's going to be Schuveli getting away on those wet tyres, but Mochik on those soft tyres actually not getting too bad a start. But it looks like Robin Panzar is going to be getting up there into that 3rd place as well. But Jim Paresis has already gone round, and I think Robin Panzar got involved there as well. He's been dropping down. Reivers and Rainey gets Netrex up into the top 4, and Hona's already up into 5th place, making up a number of positions, as we now have Reivers trying to go around the outside of David Mochik, and he's just about to get past, but actually Mochik comes back up the inside there of turn number 5, and he's going to be getting back into 2nd place. So Reivers there maybe having a little bit higher wings, not being quite so fast in that straight, but we're going to be needing to get some replays of that first corner, as I think there are quite a few cars involved, as Panzar went from about P2 down to P10.
Yeah, I did see in the background of that turn 1 shot, there was a lot of cars off in the gravel, bits missing from different ones, wings front and rear by the look of it, missing off a few cars, as that was Reivers being very slippery coming through there. And be interesting to see, of course, that's another big slide there and into the wall it looked like for Zampini there, just about, as we take a look at Aidan Millwood on an absolute charge up the inside of Blasco and Ola, but not quite managed to get it done. That was Blasco just clipping the gravel, losing a bit of the momentum, and that's going to allow Aidan Millwood to romp off into the distance. As we take a look back now at the Netrex guys coming under pressure once again. This is Lopez Iona going around the outside. Adam Rainey into turn 1. There's a bit of wheel banging between the two, but they're still going side by side for now. But Rainey just about holds on for the moment. And from what we were saying about it being quite hard to overtake, they're having a good go of these guys so far, as that's Panzar and Zalagianis as well.
It's interesting, the Netrex guy's got that 1-2. Is first of all, actually, Panzar goes side by side into turn 2. Not what you want to be doing. So he's dropping all the way down, actually using this high line. Let's see if, especially on those soft tyres, if he can get the traction, and he can do, which is very interesting to see indeed, that soft tyres actually having a pretty good grip. But yeah, those 2 Netrex guys obviously qualifying on that front row as well, but in the dry conditions. So let's see how that proves when we get to these wet conditions in the race. And our Hona's certainly looking quick indeed. But yeah, you're right about the overtaking. I think one thing with that is obviously you can't quite get the same traction out of the corners, so there's generally a little bit more variance here. But let's see what happens at the start with Adam Rainey. It's actually a fairly clean start for now. There's a Panzer going all the way around the outside. Reivers in front of him, not being able to get too far, but then somewhere through all the chaos, we're going to be seeing that was Kiersmakers, and I guess Panzer there having a bit of contact. Oh, it's actually the two burst cars having a bit of contact. Then one of the edge cars, and I think that was a Hona getting involved. A couple of cars behind them, a couple of the Goodyear cars behind them as well getting involved. This is not the best situation for these guys. So let's see Panzer. Oh yeah, just the two burst cars coming together, collecting the edge car, and I think that must have been a Priestess actually as well, getting caught up there, which isn't going to be the best sight for him. But interestingly, we saw during that replay, David Mochik, fastest lap of the race, he's caught back down the gap a bit to Shinvli. So I don't think these soft tyres are going to be the worst call in the world.
No, as you can see, there's already a bit of a dry line starting to form around some of the corners, and the more that line forms, the more it's going to play into Mochek's hands. If he's fueled up and ready to go to the end of the race as well, he could be in a prime position, because of course, if the dry line does form and the track does continue to dry out, pretty much everybody on these wet tyres is going to want to make a stop to put the slick rubber on. Otherwise, they're just going to be losing lap time hand over fist. And that's going to be an absolute dream for Mochik, the way it's staying, as well as the likes of see Brantholm down there in 14th, also on the soft tyres at the moment. So he could come into it quite nicely as well later on, as we keep an eye on this battle a little bit more. Paresis and Sport going at it for 6th and 7th position at the moment. We head around turn 13. Again, there you can see the dry line starting to form already, as Mochik is on an absolute charge with another fastest lap of the race.
Really interested to see how this one works out, as there's certainly a bit of a drier line forming, at least as our Spork there goes down the inside. Even on the wet on the inside, he managed to actually get a good braking zone. He's been able to do that as Day gets a penalty as he's leaving the pit lane, so he must have done a bit of a speeding on the entry somewhere. And there Jim Paresis losing that position to Colin Spork. So let's see what sort of progress he can make, as there's already a good 4 or 5 second gap ahead of him. So let's get a replay there. Sport just so much later on the brakes, so much more confident, because he easily made the apex of the corner. And Priestess there losing that position as he come to the front. Is Arne Schoenvliet ruining this decision to start on the wet compound tyres? Although, to be honest, it's really David Mochik. Look at the exit he got there on the inside, actually just lifting off there after a bit of contact, maybe not wanting to overtake due to that. But yeah, Mochik really getting these tyres to work, but the important factor for him is he has to stay on that dry line. If he goes on to the wet, he's going to be spinning.
Yeah, that's exactly right, and he needs to. It's almost like he needs to drive like a scale electric track. I think that might have been another factor in why he backed off so much. Actually, was he had to go dip away from that dry line just to make sure he didn't go into the back of Arne Schoenvliet there, and that would have cost him a little bit of time. As we see Lopez Iona pulling alongside Adam Rainey now. He's been looking at this move for quite some time, trying to go around the outside again. Will he try to switch back? No, the door is firmly closed by Adam Rainey, so Lopez Iona is going to have to hold on for that for now. But wondering if we'll start seeing a few of these drivers on the wet tyres as well, weaving into the wet line to try and keep the temperatures down. As we take a look now at Dano Brantholm in 14th, another one of those soft tyre runners, managing to get a lot more pace out of those tyres at the moment, breezing past Adrian Blasco up into P13. So those soft tyres definitely working at the moment.
Oh, they certainly are, and it's only going to get more dry as well, because there's quite a lot of cars lapping at the moment with I think there's only one DNF so far, Panzer. So the track's just going to go wet and going to getting drier and drier as the cars basically hoover up all that water that's on the racing line. But Mochik is getting close once again. You see just on that initial exit, he just gets so much more traction, so much better drive. And let's see what he can do out of this final corner. He's almost touching the gearbox of the Zancho car, but down the inside. He's not going to be overtaken here. So is he going to be able to get a run on this front straight? This is going to be for the lead of the race, but actually Mochik not able to overtake that in a straight line. And I wonder if he maybe was lifting off, or if that was just him being slower in a straight line than the Zancho car. But either way, we have to find out how that one works. But Spork there getting a new fastest lap, and he's not on the slicks. So maybe the track in general is just coming towards the drivers a bit.
You may be right there, as that would also explain, I think, why Mochik's suddenly dropped off the pace of Schoenvliet just a little bit. Though he's got those tyres into a nice operating window. It doesn't say that actually. He's all over the back of Arne Schuvleet once again. And it's going to be interesting to see how Mochik picks his moment to make this move, because he's going to have to come off that dry line to try and get the move done. But as soon as he does that, he's going to have no grip on those soft tyres at all. As Lopez Iona, he's got past one of the Netrex cars, I believe. In fact, no, he hasn't. He's still chasing one of them. I thought he was between the two, but no, he isn't. That is somebody else gaining on them. But this is what happened to Robin Pansar then. Like he's DNF'd, just lost the back end on the banking at turn 3 and clouts the rear.
Yeah, loses his rear wing as well, so that would have been a hefty damage repair time, just choosing to call it a day. But his teammate David Mochik, once again, not quite being able to get past Arne Schuvleet, so I wonder if there is maybe some sort of wing difference. But you can see there just how much more grip he had in the middle of the corner, hitting the back a little bit of the Zandvoort owner going down the inside. Oh, there's going to be contact there. Adam Rainey's going to be going for a spin. He's managed to save it actually, but Colin Spork now comes up the inside. He's made his way already up into 4th position, and Lopez Ahona there getting a little bit too close for comfort with the Netrex driver. And I don't think Adam Rainey is going to be too happy about that actually, because he effectively lost 2 positions because of that. And he's going to be maybe having a bit of damage as well. So I think Rainey will be pretty annoyed about that. But Pinataro there diving down the inside of turn number 3. He's going to make some contacts as now Aidan Millward is going to be coming around the outside with Zaligianis as well. So another driver making a bit of a mistake with his racing line. But here is David Mochik. And you can see actually the Zandvoort just pulling away in a straight line. So maybe the Zandvoort cars are running a bit less wing than the Burst cars.
Yeah, of course, that could explain what's been going on here. As you see, again, even on the shorter straight, Mochik drops back as soon as Schuvleet's able to get the power down. Can't get the move done. He needs an absolute godly exit from here to be in with the shout, but even then, he's not gaining at all, even with the help of the slipstream. And then as soon as he dives out from that, Schuvleet is just pulling away from him. And then we get into the corners, he's right back onto the back again. So it's going to be a very nip-tuck battle between these two all the way through the race, I think, for the time being, or at least until we see a potential pit stop coming through, which, of course, Schuvleet will have to think about that as well as the race goes on. If the track does dry out, can he somehow drag those wet tyres to the end of the race?
I think if he did a 0 stop, the wets can probably last, but I'm just not sure about the softs. We'll have to find out. But here's Ahona going down the inside. Yet I think it's just hard to see from this view, but I think his inside wheel just locked a bit there, missing that apex, and obviously just having a bit of contact there with Rainey, but it's hard to say exactly. Oh, but Mochik's got past. Mochik has got past Schuvleet somewhere in the middle part of the lap, and coming towards the end of Sector 2, he's now leading the race. So let's see what he can do on those tyres, if he can pull away. So it's actually Schuvleet going wide on the wet patch, losing a bit of grip, and Mochik very opportunistically gets past, and that could be quite a big important moment for Schuvleet, because if Mochik just pulls away now on these soft tyres, we're really going to see what he can do, and he could potentially make up enough time, as Mochik already sets the fastest lap of the race after only being in the lead for half a lap. Because if Mochik pulls away, then he might be able to discount any sort of pit stop that may or may not need to take place as well. Oh, as he goes a bit wide though.
Yeah, he does go a little bit wide on the banking, so I think the dry line there is not in the usual line that Mochik takes through there. He does like to go very, very high through there. I've noticed so far through this race. There's cars side by side in the background. There's guys into the pits. That may have been Vagianis, who's also just picked up a penalty, as that's Adam Rainey's in the pits as well. And we're going to continue watching this battle for P7 and P8. Aidan Millward, we saw him gaining position a moment ago, now looking to gain another one as we head into turn 3 on Stoyan Barbakov, who's dragging Pinataro along with him, making it a 3-car battle for the time being. And Pinataro is carrying a lot of speed to that middle section as Millward goes wide, and Pinataro is going to dive up the inside, just like we saw for the race lead just a moment ago, and steals the position away.
Oh, that corner Schrijvlak there being very important for both those Zandvoort drivers, losing a position in that corner, because even for the wet weather tyres now, as Mochik already does a 17.6, he's 8 seconds ahead of Schuvleet as well. You want to be on the dry weather tyres, because that is many seconds a lap. If you don't pit now, you're basically going to be losing a pit stop time. So that is a huge pace increase for anyone who is on those soft compound tyres, which is why I think we saw a couple of people already coming into the pit lane. But even for these wet tyres, if you go on the wetter part of the track, you're going to be losing time as well. And it actually looks like the raw racing line itself, the 2 meter wide bit, is actually dry. But let's see, Zancho here, massive slipstream there down the inside of turn number 1. Can Millward make it on the brakes? No, he can't, so he's going to have to try somewhere else later in the lap.
Yeah, and you can see just there as dipping onto the wet side of the track just for a moment, and then back onto that racing line, and just managing to follow along for now. And we saw earlier on those Sancho cars are very quick in a straight line if they are running those same or very similar setups. We saw with Schuvely, he was able to pull away from Mochik even with Mochik on those soft compound tyres, as Mochik goes even faster with a 16.4. And yeah, it's going to be a battle, I think, throughout this race of those cars that have gone for a bit less downforce, those that have got more downforce, and where that's going to play into each other's hands, where the moves can be made, and who's going to make the least mistakes as well. Of course, with conditions like these, is very tricky as well. It takes a look up the inside of turn 11, but not quite able to get anything done there.
This is a very big moment of the race. Schuvely now 17 seconds behind Mochik. This is going to be quite important. Schuvely really should have pit straight away. But let's see. Aidan Millward now getting down the inside. We're also going to get Brantholm. Is it going to be a double overtake there for Brantholm? No, it's not going to be. But Aidan Millward there has a bit of contact with Barbakov. And who actually is going to come out on top of this? It looks like it's going to be Barbakov still. Brantholm couldn't get past him. But Millward there dropping down a position. I'll have to maybe see a replay of that to see exactly whose fault it was, but definitely those two drivers coming together and causing a bit of an issue for Millward there, dropping down that position. He's now under attack from Julis there for 10th position, as we see another couple of drivers, Blasco and Morville, coming into the pit lane with 30 minutes remaining.
Yeah, and we're seeing these pits, and as we were saying a moment ago, as that's very squiggly there for Common Sport, trying to get past Reivers in the Netrix car, leads me quite nicely onto my point. We've lost the other Netrix car. Adam Rainey, you can see there, currently in P16, has DNF'd from the race. Now, he hit a little while ago onto the soft tyres, and I'm wondering if the drivers are still struggling just that little bit, because you get one tiny little bit offline in conditions like these and go from all of the grip in the world to virtually nothing. That was a set of the soft compound tyres going on for Reivers, so following in the footsteps of his teammate and a lot of other drivers going onto that tyre for now. But can he keep it on the road? That is the most important question for everybody that's chosen to go onto those tyres at the moment, as we see the battle breaking out between some drivers that haven't quite jumped the tyre yet. A little bit of contact to go with it.
And here is another driver on those softs, is Brantholm, trying to get past Barbakov. And that pace difference is just quite incredible. Schuvely now 24 seconds behind. So he's probably one lap away from being a pit stop behind Mochik already in the course of about 5 laps or so. Here is Millward. Difficult. A bit lucky there with the pit wall actually ending. A bit difficult to see there. Maybe Barkov just slightly came down on him as a little bit. But a bit of an awkward situation there with the two lines sort of crossing a little bit on the apex out of turn 1. Let's see from Brantholm's point of view. And yeah, Millward didn't quite keep to the inside, but then he also didn't really come wide as well. So a bit of an interesting one for those drivers, as Brantholm once again tries to get down the inside on the soft tyres, but on the wet part, and he won't be able to stop the car. Bit of contact with Barbakov, and now Millward is getting back involved again, as this has turned into a 4-way fight for 8th place.
Yeah, so I'm definitely going to rescind my earlier comment about it being difficult to overtake around here. Well, okay. Amend the comment, shall we say. It's still difficult, but it's definitely possible, as everybody's proving at the moment. We're seeing, again, Barbakov and Brantholm going at it, and Millward's closing out at a right rate of knots, coming into the corner. That Sancho's got so much straight line speed, but just can't quite get the grip down in the corner, and still Barbakov and Brantholm are going at it. I'm trying to find his way through any way he can. Of course, he is on those soft tyres, as you said a moment ago. Barbakov's still on the wets, as is Aidan Millward. So he's sort of stuck in a sandwich at the moment, and may have more pace in him, but needs to get the move done to be able to lay it down.
It looks like Schoenvliet has pit as well, along with Reivers, I should say. Mochik has now got a 40-second lead, so even if he pits, he's going to come out in the lead. So what he needs to do is make sure that he keeps that gap and basically doesn't make any sort of big strategic risks, because he doesn't need to do that. But once again, Brantholm trying to get at least side by side, but again, it's going to be on the brakes here into the chicane. But with those soft compound tyres, it's just so difficult. Once you go offline, you just lose all the grip in the world, and then you just can't do anything, basically, as we saw on the previous lap. He couldn't stop the car, made a bit of contact with Barbakov, but now out into this final corner. Let's see if he's going to finally have the straight line speed to try and get past Barbakov. He gets on the inside. Barbakov pushes him onto the wet part of the track, so Brantholm's going to have to do his braking on the wets with those slick tyres, and he just backs out of it. He doesn't quite have the same confidence in those conditions, being so tricky, and once again going a bit offline here on the inside of turn number 2, but Barbakov's going to just cut him up a little bit, and as we now have Lopez Ahona there trying to get involved as well, so Brantholm really needs to try and get past, otherwise he's going to be past himself.
Yeah, so Lopez Iona's sort of slotted into this battle, having made a pit stop. He's now on the back of these guys on the, I believe that is the soft compound tyre. But it's some very clever defensive driving coming in from Barbakov at the moment. He knows the cars behind are on the soft tyres. So that's a hell of a dive from Lopez Iona on, I think, caught me sleeping, let alone Brantholm there, as Brantholm's pulled off the road there as well.
He's having an issue, I think, because he's now been overtaken. Oh, no way. Is that Mochik coming through to lap all of these guys already? It must be. There was a burst car coming through that at some point, although Schoenvliet is now set fastest lap of the race. Now he's finally made his pit stop. So that's possibly why Brantholm was slowing down, actually, probably with the blue flags. But now Mochik's got an interesting decision here, because obviously his tyres going to be wearing the longer that he stays out. And obviously now he's getting involved with some traffic and blue flags and things like that. So he wants to make sure he's not losing loads of time, as Marco Sanfilippo now goes with the best lap time of a 15.3, 3.85 for him. So the lap times are certainly coming here for the guys on these soft compound tyres, but Mochik starting so soon, it's going to get to a point where there's a crossover and he's actually slower than some of these drivers. So this is going to be a very important decision. And we now got this three-way battle for the last step on the podium. Noah Reivers trying to get past here with Schoenvliet as well. As a bit of contact there with Schoenvliet and Paresis, and Reivers is going to jump all the way through there. Thank you very much. Getting 2 positions as Schoenvliet and Paresis having a bit more contact coming back onto the track. And that is not the way you want to be racing for that position indeed. But let's see now, Schoenvliet up the inside. So much more grip than Paresis, who hasn't stopped yet, as Aidan Millward gets a penalty. Paresis surely has to come in. But no, he's going to stay out, trying to make something work. But Schoenvliet there, massive top speed, getting past the edge car. No, once again, Paresis is good on the brakes. But the Dutchman going to get up there ahead of him, as well as a lapped car getting past him as well, just showing how slow Paresis is at the moment.
Yeah, and I think this will be the last call for those that are on the wet tyres still, as we take a look at the replay of what's been going on with Lopez Iona and that dive we saw a few laps ago. That was came from absolutely nowhere, didn't it? And I think he thought he was being lapped there. Did Brantholm, but no, that was for position and caught him off guard. And now Barbakov coming under pressure once again, this time from Sanfilippo. And what I was going to say before all that action kicked off was there's some very clever defensive driving coming out from Barbakov at the moment. He's still in the wet tyres. He knows all those around him are on the slicks, so anytime he's coming under pressure, he's forcing him to take that wet line. He's keeping that car dead on the dry line and just giving himself that advantage going into a corner. Anybody on those slick tyres then has to brake and cope with all the aquaplaning of the wet part of the track and everything that comes with that. Just how long you can keep it up, as you can see Sanfilippo trying to get alongside and a little bit of contact as well. As now Schoenvliet put in the fastest lap of the race on an absolute charge now up to P3 again, as we see Colin Spork diving into the pits as well. And will we see Barbakov in this lap?
Oh, Spork's in now. He's finally bailed out. He was the highest man apart from Mochik to not make a stop, as once again getting some batting here into final corner. There's going to be a bit of contact there between Barbakov and Brantholm. They've been fighting so hard for the last 5 or 6 laps, and finally they are going to have a bit of a big issue there coming into the final corner. But let's actually get a replay here of Noah Reivers managing to jump Shumvli and Precis. Spork's actually got a penalty. We'll get to that in a moment. There's a bit of contact there between Shumvli and Precis. Reivers managing to get past, and lovely 2 places there. The parting of the sea in front of him, managing to get up there. But Spork speeding in the pit lane is really not going to help him, because he is looking at least for some decent points up there in 6th place at the moment. But he's going to have to do a drive-through or a stop-go penalty for that, and he's going to be dropping down even more effectively, taking another pit stop. But let's see some tyres. Jim Priest is still out there on the wet compound tyres. Got Blasco on the mediums down in 12th place, as Shumvli once again sets a fastest lap. So he's going to have to try and clinch back David Mochik, but Mochik looks like he's got a decent pace himself. But the important point for Mochik is he basically had a pit stop advantage. So if he's going to be going to the end of the race, then he can pretty much just manage the pace in the next 21 minutes. Because look at his gap. It's almost a minute for David Mochik.
Yeah, it's mad. And this was Colin Spork picking up that penalty, I believe. Just got on the power a little bit too early, was it?
Yeah, So basically, there's a green light, which is where the pit exit used to be at the end of the pit building. But now the pit limiter zone goes all the way around, effectively on the inside of turn 1. So that's definitely going to be a stop-go penalty for Spork. But because he sped so early, if that makes sense, he actually would have actually gained more time back, if you see what I'm trying to say. So you can see on the picture, look how far around it is. It's all the way right at the exit of the apex, effectively, or turn number 1. So he would have actually gained a few seconds back with his speeding as well. Obviously, it won't discount the drive-through, but certainly less time than some others, as there's 20 minutes remaining now. But yeah, that Mochik lead, almost a minute, lapping everyone to 5th place already. That was a very important strategic call from the Burst team, but there's a very big fight brewing for that 2nd place between Reivers and Shumvli as well. So yeah, I think we're looking at still some fairly action-packed racing in the last 20 minutes.
Yeah, that was going to be something I was going to touch on, actually. Was we saw Brices diving into the pits from 5th place just as he was about to get lapped by Mochik. So it's been dominant so far, but as we've been saying earlier on, he's been on those soft tyres since the start of the race. Can he get them another 20 minutes around the Zandvoort circuit, or is he going to lose that tyre? Of course, there is going to be some pretty huge pace drop off here on those soft or on those slick tyres. It is a very front tyre wear heavy circuit, and the pace he's been going around trying to build that lead doesn't really look to me like he's been trying to look after them very, very much. He's just been trying to eke every bit of performance he can. So what's he going to have left towards the end of the race? Is he going to be able to get to the end, or is he going to have to make a stop and bring himself into the fight that we've seen on the timing tower there, with Reivers and Shumvli very, very close together?
We'll have to find out. I mean, Reivers, they've already closed up a few seconds in the last couple of laps. Obviously, Mochik's issue at the moment is he's going through some blue flags because he is so far ahead. He's having basically to go through all that traffic himself. But I think for Mochik, 53 seconds. Like, even if his tyres go off the cliff, like, he must be able to... Like, he'll just be able to pit, won't he? Like, if his tyres get that bad, like, that's how big the lead is. Even with pitting, he'll be able to come back out as Spork there has dropped down to 12th place. So let's see Mochik. All he needs to do is just keep this cool. Oh, that is not what you want to be doing, David. Going a bit wide there in the coming into the penultimate corner. Because he doesn't need to be making any mistakes like that. Because as I said, if he's having any sort of issues, he just pits and gets a new set of tyres. So hopefully he keeps it nice and cool and just manages that gap. But I think with Reivers and Shumvli probably going to be fighting for position at some point. I think they're just going to be pushing all the way to the end. And it was San Filippo there goes a bit wide, which just shows you when you get offline what can happen. But yeah, I think as long as Mochik keeps it cool, he must be able to get this in the bag.
Yeah, I think this is what we were taking a brief look at before, with Conspark so nearly back into the back of that car in front, and then he's just so much quicker at the moment, but it's trying to find the place to get past. He does get that Team Red Line car past, as you can see there, but yeah, it's so dangerous going off this drying line on this slick tyre. As soon as you do, you're just aquaplaning around everywhere, so it is kind of like Scale Electric almost, with these guys trying to stay in one single line, and then as soon as you get off, you are doing those Scale Electric style drifts around the corners, and let's hope in the next 16 minutes we don't see any of them flying off under the sofa.
Yeah, that would not be ideal, but Shimley getting so close now to Noah Reivers, and we just saw the top speed advantage that Zandvoort have. Look how far Shimley was behind, and he manages to close out all the way up. I think this is a pretty big contrast, because we saw earlier Nerex seemed to have a pretty high wings as well. That probably was one reason why they were so good in qualifying, actually. As Barbkov sets the fastest time, getting down to the 13s now, such as the pace increase. But yeah, let's see Shimley. Look how far behind he is. This is getting so close for the Zandvoort driver. Reivers had to defend there, otherwise Shimley would have thought about a dive down the inside. So he needs to try and hold on. Reivers' speciality this season so far is being consistent at getting podiums. So even if Shimley gets past him, he's still probably guaranteed a podium. But this second place would certainly help him, as he's a couple of points behind Shimley in the championship.
Yeah, of course, he's currently sitting P3 in that championship on 257 points going into this round to Shimley's 260 and Mochik's 261. So every little helps for every single one of these drivers trying to fight for those top two places, as we are taking a look at this is Laurent Kirschmecker's trying to chase down Pignataro up ahead. The HK car can see just ahead of us there. Anytime you get anywhere slightly offline, you can see the spray immediately coming off the tyres. And anytime you see that driver's losing some grip, losing some time, and now Kirschmecker's is all over the back of Pignataro now. And can he keep this pressure on? Can he take P8 away? As we do listen to the car now.
And I think the important factor that we're seeing for David Mochik here is he's not actually losing. Oh, as Reivers goes off there, that's going to be the position gone. Unfortunately for him, as Schumblick's going to get past there, so Reivers just pushing a little bit too far. But the important factor, I was going to say, always Sporks lost his front wing somewhere. So Mochik's, his lead is not coming down massively. And it looks like Mochik might be going towards the end, because there's only 30 minutes left. He hasn't come into the pit lane so far. Look at that. A bit of a spin there from Spork, just losing it on the exit of turn number 3. That's going to be some damage for him, considering he's already had to stop-go penalty. That's not really helping his race at all. But yeah, it seems that Mochik is able to keep, I think, enough pace to stay at least in a good position with this strategy that he is trying. Brandholm's come in, interestingly. He started on the soft tyres as well. So I wonder if that's just a fuel situation. Because obviously taking the full 45 minutes of fuel is quite a lot at the beginning. So we'll have to see how the one works out. But I do think if Mochik is going to the end, it looks like even on pace-wise, he's going to be able to hold on to this.
Yeah, for the time being, I believe you're going to be right. As touching back on what happened to Colin Spork, we just saw that, I think, as we came off the listening to that glorious V10 noise for a little while, and now Stoyan trying to interrupt me, trying to get past into P10. Not quite able. Julius shuts the door on him for the time being, but you can tell Barbakov is hungry to get back into the top 10 at this point. He's been fighting there most of this race. And this is the battle now for P5, looking back from Zalagianis onto Jim Parisas coming up behind him as well. It's so much closing speed in the corners Parisas has at the moment. Yeah, it's a bad race. Bad race gone worse for Colin Spork. Unfortunately, as you can see, down in P15 now, after having to go through pit lane once more. Meanwhile, everybody else having lots of fun out there in the changing conditions. Jim Parisas all over the back of Zalagianis still at the moment in the Edge FC car, trying to find a way through. But with that one single dry line, it's so difficult.
Yeah, Spork's season has been a little bit disappointing, considering he's on that number 1 car, and the numbers were from the hot lap pre-qualifier. So he was the fastest in pre-qualifying, but it hasn't really worked out that way, as he's now all over the back of Parisas, effectively trying to unlap himself. Spork trying to unlap himself. Parisas here, actually trying to get past Zalagianis. The two Greek drivers here going at it for this 5th place, and this would be a really nice result for Zalagianis if he can hold on for the next 10 and a bit minutes. But let's see what Parisas can do for Edge Esports. But it looks like he doesn't quite have the top speed to get past his fellow countryman into turn 1 there, and Spork just is going to have to sit behind these and let these guys battle it out.
Yeah, absolutely, and at least Parisas will be... As Parisas has just lost position to his teammate. By the look of things, he's dropping way back. He's P8 now. Did something happen to him? There, it's the other Edge Esports car. Lauren Kirschbecker's now in P6. He's DNF. You're right, yeah.
Parisas, I wonder if he did... yeah, I wonder if he did what Spork did on the exit of turn number 3. Because you have the massive... Oh, no, he just ran into the back into turn 2. Massive... overspeed he had there, probably just braking too late. So Zalagianis is going to have some diffuser damage from that, especially. Parisas there just going a bit too hot into that corner, losing the rear end there in turn 2. And once you get on that wetter part of the tarmac as well, you've just got no chance. You're going for a spin. And here is Blasco, who's actually on those medium compound tyres. It's something that we don't really see in the Formula Challenge. Because they are not required to use different tyres, whereas in the Formula Pro there is a specific rule about that, but not in the Challenge. So probably the first time really we're seeing the mediums used, and he's just letting Mochik through there, whose lead has now Zalagianis DNFs as well. We'll get to that in a second, because he's obviously going to probably have had an accident himself. But Mochik's lead has now come down to 46 seconds. But he's looking pretty good in the lead, as Pignataro is also coming in the pit lane. So he's had an issue somewhere as well. So some drivers starting to get caught out as well. Oh, he's going to hit... was that Parisas, maybe? Still sorting himself out. Pignataro come around the corner, couldn't do anything about that. That's a big disappointment for him, because he was in a really nice position.
Yeah, that's... quite unfortunate. It's he was going quite sideways through turn 1, just here behind Blasco. That's Sanfilippo having a bit of a drifty moment. We watched Blasco try and chase down Stoyan Barbakov. So we saw the two Greek drivers going at it a little while ago, and now they are both out of the race, which is unfortunate from some pretty solid positions they were looking to be in the mid part of the top 10, as Blasco is not giving those curbs much room, absolutely clouting those curbs on the inside there.
And we jump to Mochik, still 46 seconds in lead, so he's still easily he has easily a pit stop advantage, but it looks like he is staying out, which is quite an interesting choice, but that obviously meant that he feels he's got plenty of tyres, plenty of fuel, because the fuel one is interesting, as we were mentioning in the warm-up. Obviously, as the track dries, you start using more and more fuel because you spend more time on the throttle during the lap. So if he, obviously, during the warm-up, if he set his fuel level for 45 minutes of wet driving, then obviously you're going to use a lot less fuel, and therefore he might have had to do a splash and dash. But it looks like, for now, you would have thought he would have already pit by now, but he hasn't. So he's leading the way still, but there's still some battles out there. One of them, unfortunately, is P11 for Pinataro, who got a bit caught up with, I believe it was Paresis, in turn 3 after Paresis' accident. And now Pinataro in P11. It's about 3.5 or 4 seconds behind Barbkov to get inside the top 10. But he certainly has deserved a few more points than that today. So I think he's going to be a bit disappointed, but let's see what he can do in the final 6.5 minutes.
Yeah, I'm wondering, so I was just about to mention Adrian Blasco, who's now locked in this battle with Fabian Boller. Wasn't he behind Barbakov a couple of laps ago? So he's made some positions up in the last couple of laps as well. Moved up to P8, now we're seeing Fabian Boller coming at him for P8, P9, heading around turn 13 and onto the banking of 14. You can see as wide as he can afford to be there for Adrian Blasco without getting onto the wetter parts of the road. Possibly able to carry a bit more top speed there, Blasco. As even with the toe into turn 1, Fabian Boller wasn't able to close up until we hit the braking zone, and then he closed right the way up, as we saw around the outside now at turn 3. How's this going to go? Holds the line, very respectful from Blasco, giving him the room, and the position is taken by Fabian Boller around turn 3 there, putting a lot of faith in Adrian Blasco not riding up onto the top part of the circuit there. Great driving from the two of them, and Fabian Boller is now off on a charge after Julius in P7.
Yeah, that was a lovely move, wasn't it? Just using the banking to obviously his benefit, doing really well there, and yeah, I'm sure he's going to be enjoying that one. As we come back to Kevin Morville, he's got Aidan Millward behind, but Millward just pulled out the way because I assume that's probably Noah Reivers there coming through to lap them, and lapping has been quite common, because as you see with some of these intervals on the tower, the gaps have got huge, as they do during the wet weather driving, which means a lot of these drivers have been lapped sometimes multiple times as well. But let's see, Barbkov now on the back of Blasco. Can he do what Morville just did and Bala just did and get through? But no, Bala's actually gone off in turn number 1, and that's going to outdo everything he just did in the last lap to get past there, and he's going to be dropping down into P11, which put Pinataro up inside the top 10 without him having to do anything. But now Barbkov trying to get on the back of Blasco, and let's see what he can do as he comes up the hill. Barbkov has looked pretty racy today, so I wouldn't put it past him getting this position.
Yeah, he's been involved in his fair share of fights this evening, has Stoyan Barbakov, and he's once again locked into another one. As Pinataro gets on to the rear of him as well. There was a replay of Aidan Millward just pulling out of the way. I believe that was to let Noah Reivers through. Here it is. Blue flags are waving, and out of the way he goes. And this 3-car battle is, if nobody makes a mistake, I think this is going to be one to watch towards the end of the race. They've all been quite racy. I mean, Blasco's been going up and down the back end of the top 10 for a while. Barbakov's been racy as well, and now Pinataro tagging in on the action. So we see them all exiting turn 14. Stoyan Barbakov's got a better drive off there, and it looks like he might be bringing Pinataro with him 3 wide down into Tarzan. Pinataro around the outside of 2 of them, and Barbakov was right in the back of Blasco there, not sort of boxed in, nowhere really to go. And Pinataro, the opportunist, takes 2 positions in 1 corner.
That was an unbelievable move by Pinataro. He had 2 wheels on the grass for a good 100 metres there coming towards the braking zone, and he managed to keep it in a straight line. And look at this, getting all on the grass, on the dry stuff, can brake so much later, and just going around the outside of both of them. Barbakov is going to be probably quite annoyed about that, really, because he's been sat behind there for a lap or 2, and then Pinataro just comes up behind them and is off into the distance already. So Blasco, they're getting very wiggly coming out of that corner, and he's going to be struggling a little bit to hold on to that position. It looks like Barbakov actually managed to get past as well as Fabian Bala there inside the top 10 now. So Blasco's decision to go on those medium tyres maybe not helping him, because he's obviously just struggling a bit with the grip, as we already have only just under 2.5 minutes left of the race already. So it's really flown by with the amount of action that is being caused by these weather conditions, as Aidan Millwood there getting down the inside. I think this is Kevin Morville that he's racing really tight there on the apex of turn number 1, and he manages to get through then. Yeah, on the tower. Yeah, it was Kevin Morville that Millwood managed to get past inside the top 12 for him. But here we go with Noah Reivers. He's caught onto the back of Arne Schoenvliet, and this is going to be very important indeed, with only probably 2 laps to go in this race. What can the Dutchman do as DRS is now activated?
Yeah, so it's an absolute sprint to the finish now for Noah Reivers. You can see, close the gap, no threat to Mochik at this point. He can make a pit stop and still come out easily in the lead of this race, so I'm not sure that he'd really want to. But this fight is going to be for those final 2 podium positions. Noah Reivers been closing in on Schoenvliet for quite some time and trying to get the position. You can see he's dropped back a little bit now, but with probably at least one more lap to go. Gets one more stab at each one of these corners to try and find his way up into P2 at what is his home race. As seeing more lap traffic getting out of the way of these two. No blue flags interfering with this battle. It is a straight race. Still those wet parts of the circuit coming into play as well for any fights we're seeing in this. It's what has been quite an interesting race around Zandvoort, with the conditions adding that extra spice to the mix.
Yeah, it's been an unbelievable race indeed, and I want to see where Mochik is as well, because he's so far ahead. He actually might be on the final lap, but let's see. Noah Reivers coming in towards turn 1, doesn't have the top speed. We saw the Zancho, they have such good top speed even with the DRS. Noah Reivers couldn't quite get along there, but he has at least one more lap to go. But David Mochek's position is what will determine that. There's only 17 seconds left in this race. I wonder if he's actually going to be coming across the line. We'll have to see. Coming into the final corner, is he going to slow down and take the victory, or are we going to have another lap indeed? But I think he's actually going to slow down. David Mochik is going to take victory here in round 5 of the Formula Challenge Series. An amazing strategy there, staying on those soft, or starting even on those soft compound tyres, staying out for the whole race, so planning his fuel strategy as well. So that was obviously planned from the get-go, and that has got him a fairly comfortable lead over Arne Schoenvliet, who seems to be holding on from Noah Reivers. Reivers unfortunately going wide at Schrijvelak, losing that position, and unfortunately is not going to be quite able to get back past as long as Arne can get around this final corner, which he can. And the Zancho driver will be getting that second place, which is very important, because Mochik is obviously his championship rival as well as Reivers. And Reivers there will be pretty happy with that podium, I'm sure, but a bit upset of losing that second place. But then we have to go back quite a while before you see the next car, Lopez Hona, coming into the final couple of corners himself, 4th place. He'll be very happy with that one indeed. I think it was about P11 that he started on the grid, and working his way up there into P4, as Keersmakers is in the pits apparently on this final lap. So I don't know if he's actually going to be finishing in 5th place. We'll have to see what happens with Brandtholm, as we're already seeing here. Julis, he's actually, they're still, oh no, they would have finished because they're already a lap down actually, indeed. So he is going to be, they're already finished, because a number of these drivers got lapped, Paul. It was quite an incredible thing to see, all these drivers being lapped down. I mean, you saw there's only 4 drivers on the lead lap, then there's only 2 drivers on the next lap. The timings certainly opened up quite a lot.
Yeah, it was absolutely incredible pace from the top 4 especially, but David Mochik even more so with the lead he finished with as well to take the win. It's the usual suspects, the top 3, Mochik P1, Schoenvliet P2, and Reivers in P3 in the same order they came into this in the championship, in fact. Lopez Iona coming across the line for P4, just ahead of Laurent Kirschmakers, who, worth noting as well, he's got a nice little bit of an edge on his rivals. He was sort of locked in that battle for 4th with Parissis and Panzar, neither of whom finished this race, so he's come away with a handful more points than they would have as well in that little battle. Then it was Brownholm in P6 with Julius and Pinutaro P8 and Fabio Bola and Adrian Blasco rounding out the top 10. Sadly for Stoyan Barbakov, he actually DNF'd. I was about to say he didn't finish in the points, but as you can see there, he DNF'd down in 15th. Kevin Morville ended up 11th because of that, with Danilo Sanfilippo behind him. Aidan Millward came home in that Zancho in a solid 13th place with Marco Sanfilippo behind him. Then it was Stoyan Barbakov. Not quite sure what happened to him on the last lap of the race. Looked like he was on for a top 10 finish. Didn't quite come to pass. Then we've got Andrea Zampini in P15 with 32 race laps completed, and then a whole lot of DNFs of drivers getting caught out by positions and getting involved in contact. We saw Colin Spork going off a few times in the changeable conditions. Zalagianis going off, Jim Parissis going off at turn 3, Adam Rainey going off quite early in the race as well. All of those drivers DNFing, and I believe there was 3 other drivers also not finishing this race, one of whom was Robin Pansar, who went out on lap 1. So he's also dropped out in that battle a little bit further back. So this was round 5 of the Formula Challenge Championship. We'll be back for round 6 on the 1st of October at Monza, Cameron.
Yes, it was a pretty incredible race, to say the least. And it's been quite a fascinating one to see what the drivers could do in those wet conditions. But there's still 2 races to go, and by my maths, it'll be Mochik leading the way by 6 points to Schoenvliet, who will then have a 5-point gap to Reivers. So Reivers will now be about 11 points off in that 3rd place in the championship. And with Parissis DNFing, Panzar DNFing, Rainey, Spork as well, Kismaker's not having a good day, the gap behind them is going to be pretty massive. So it's really those 3 drivers going for the championship, and for only the 2 places that will get into Formula Pro as well. So it's been a very exciting evening of racing. As we say, we got to those 2 races left with round 6 Monza in a couple of weeks, before we then have another couple of weeks to the rerun of Indy. But Paul, it's been a great race, and I'm sure we're going to have a lot of fun next time. So thank you for joining me. Indeed, remember, next week we go back to the GT racing. So on Monday we will have GT Pro, then it'll actually be Thursday for GT Challenge next week. So do tune in for that one on all the normal channels. But here in Zandvoort, that is it from a very soggy Zandvoort, but hopefully we gave you some good fun indeed. So we will see you next time.